Now, hey, well, guys, it's over. The 2021 NFL draft. I'm George Thomas with Steve Doerschuck from the Canton Repository, Ulrich from the Akron Beacon Journal, and Marla. This is lack of sleep. Marla Ridenour from the Akron Beacon Journal. Guys, other than, I don't know, is the word astonishment at what took place this week accurate, or is it more tempered than that? What do you think of this year?
Well, I just think from the standpoint that they get Greg Newsome II and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, when everyone on earth thought that those two guys were going to be first-round picks. And then when JOK falls out of the first round, you think he's going to get swooped up early in the second round. The Browns are way back for 59. He starts falling some more, and they're aggressive enough to go up and pick him in the trade up from 59 to 52. And today, one of their scouts, a national scout, Charles Walls, said no way, no how could he envision heading into the draft and landing those two players. And when you think about them being the headliners, 8-man class, 5 of those players are defenders. I think that it kind of starts there, and it is astonishing from the standpoint of those two players being picked by the same Cleveland Browns team, looking for, big upgrades at both positions and the versatility and speed.
I think it's also astonishing that both of them were there at all. I mean, they both could have been gone before 26. So,
Steve, you were going to say something? You've frozen on my screen. That's not good.
I was starting to say that overall draft grade, and that's one of my assignments that I'm working on now, the Browns overall draft grade. I'll go ahead and slip it out that I'm giving the Browns an A. George, I'm really sorry that I can't make it an A+. You were looking at me askance or amazed that the second pick, Owusu-Koramoah, harder to pronounce than Ridenour, by the way. But I give it an A on these grounds. The entire mission this year was to find 3, hopefully 4 people who will help a playoff contender take the next step and, just out and say it, contend for the Super Bowl, get in the playoffs and be really competitive, even slightly more competitive than the 2020 team was when it was very competitive in the playoffs. So it was essential for them to fill some needs and get players who can help right away. And that's why it's an A. I'm forgetting about actually the last 5 picks. Maybe not the 4th pick. We can talk about that because they really needed to fortify the offensive line with some depth. And I like the 4th pick that they made on those grounds. But in Greg Newsome, let's face it, you have an instant starter. I don't see how he doesn't start this year. In JOK, you have an instant starter. That's not even something that has to come out of your mouth. He starts this year, and he plays somewhere between 60 and 80% of the snaps. And as we were talking about last night, guys, I really like Anthony Schwartz because I really like a burner. And when you hear that a guy has rare speed, that guy with rare speed doesn't have Anthony Schwartz speed. He's a 10.1 100 meters guy from high school, and that just as a threat I love. So they got stuff that can help them get over the hump this year, and that's why I give this draft an A.
For anyone who's worried that he's just a burner, I talked to Gus Malzahn this afternoon, and he said point blank that he can go only one place, and that's up, because A, he's smart, and B, he's still learning the game. And if you look between his final season and the season prior, his production nearly doubled, if I'm not mistaken. So that's something to look to and hope for, that he just continues that ascension. By the same token, I asked him about LeCount as well. And in that area, he said the Browns got a steal. So for what that's worth.
That's a good source, George. I'm interested to hear that you talked to him and he said that. I mean, the guy Schwartz is such a track guy that on some of the online bios that you look up, there's a lot more about his track accomplishments up top on those pages than there is about his football accomplishments. And it's not like he did nothing at Auburn. He helped them at times, and obviously projects in the Browns' mind as a guy who can develop it. Yeah, I happen to respect Gus Malzahn, and it's got to be encouraging for the Browns and Browns fans to hear that he gave that kind of endorsement.
Yeah, I think I'm really eager to read Gus Malzahn's comments when George Wright said, and I think that Schwartz is really interesting because, you know, I had this thing for Rondale Moore heading into the draft, the 5'7" receiver from Purdue, because of his dynamic skill set, what he did against Ohio State 3 years ago, I'll never get over. Obviously, he was picked 10 spots before that number 59 spot that the Browns were sitting in. So he went 49 overall in the second round. But Schwartz is going to, I think, get that portion of the playbook opened up for him. The stuff that went to JoJo Natson last year that, you know, I talked about earlier in the week, you know, the jet sweeps and the screens. But Schwartz, obviously, with that, as the Browns keep saying, world-class Olympic speed, is going to take the top off defenses. There's going to be an immediate role for him. He's not the instant starter that Steve described in the first two picks, but he, I think, definitely has a role. And I think it's going to be really fun. And I like the day three. I like the way that the Browns started with depth in the trenches. You know, James Hudson, you get I think a really interesting offensive tackle who they're going to train at guard. And then Tommy Togiai. I know you guys are high on the defensive tackle from Ohio State. And I just think it you know, it was kind of cool that the Browns stayed in Ohio for both those picks, Cincinnati and Ohio State. And you know, depth on the lines is important and needed. So I like the way they started day three. I just think that really there are a few holes to poke in this class as far as first impression. Obviously, there's 8 picks, and we don't know how many are really going to pan out, but it's all about first impression when it comes to these draft grades. And I agree with Steve that, you know, they're worthy of an A based on the first impression basis.
Togiai really interests me simply because I think that we won't see Sheldon Richardson back here, which is somewhat disappointing. We'll see how it shakes out, but I'm afraid of that. I'm sorry. We're not supposed to say stuff like this, but I love talking to Sheldon.
No, he was our Good Guy Award winner 2 years ago, and I totally agree with George. But I did take that as a signal. A 4th round pick defensive tackle. You got Andrew Billings coming back after opting out last year. He was a free agent signing they really liked in 2020. Was starting experience with the Bengals. Obviously, Malik Jackson, a free agent pickup this offseason with a lot of familiarity with Joe Woods. And then a 3rd round pick from last year in Jordan Elliott. So that's 4 deep defensive tackles. That's what you want. So I did view that this pick here in the 4th round as a sign that Sheldon isn't going to come back, even though the Browns had left the door open.
Question: was that move to get, and I still can't pronounce his name, Jeremiah, next to the Justin Fields move? Was that the gangster move of the draft, do you think?
Marla, this is yours.
I mean, I think it could turn out that way. You know, if he's as good as I think he is. You know, I've been lusting after him since January. So, but I mean, Justin Fields. I mean, that was a stunning drop for him too. But I do feel like we've seen Browns teams in the past when, you know, we're all sitting in Berea and some guy's falling and we're all like, go get him, and they don't do it. So, I guess I'm sort of tempered by the fact that we've seen them fail in those scenarios and the fact that they seem not to care and just went for it. I really got to give them credit for pulling that off.
Well, here's
You got to be careful about your go get 'ems, Marla. I like this one, but the ultimate go get 'em of the expansion era, I think, is Bill Savage in 2007. Like he had just swallowed a canary coming into the room to say he had traded up for Brady Quinn, and at the time, I seem to recall that, maybe you do too, as the most popular move of the expansion era to that point was the eighth year. But that was a go get 'em. I think almost everybody wanted it to happen because they really needed a quarterback, and that was one where it didn't work. To me, this is a lot safer. JOK. A linebacker who checks out on everybody's scouting report, and as opposed to Quinn, who dropped a bunch to be available at 22. JOK was evaluated as high as number 15 by Daniel Jeremiah. So, yeah, Marla, I love that go get 'em aspect about the JOK. All those years when you wished they would have done it, or maybe could have done it and didn't. But that's kind of the pivotal point of this draft to me, when Barry and DePodesta pulled that off.
Not too bold of a prediction here, but judging, and I got to experience his interviews twice now, but just judging from the way he speaks, he could, and if he plays the way the confidence he exudes, he's going to be an instant fan favorite. I mean, he's got charisma, and it's not just personality, but it's like a certain confidence that just oozes through the screen. Did I read that wrong or no?
No, I don't think you read that wrong at all. And I think he's already a fan favorite, which is remarkable, but I think true. I mean, George, you saw the response. You were in on his pro day Zoom. We were in on this pro day circuit, and his quote about his meeting with the Browns pre-draft just it went. I don't know if it went viral, but it picked up some steam. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like about the personality of a lot of these guys. I think they fit the Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski profile in more ways than the versatility, the speed, the athleticism that are kind of the themes of the draft, but also the kind of the makeup and what came across in short conversations with them. So I'm totally with you, George. I was wondering, if you guys wouldn't mind indulging me, aside from the big one, the Newsome and the JOK both being picked by the Browns, does anybody have a kind of a biggest surprise of this draft?
For us or anybody?
A Browns specific surprise. I have one in mind, but I didn't know if anybody else had any takeaway.
What, the runner, maybe the running back / wideout, Nate? That's I guess that might be surprising to some that they would go after a guy who looks like he has a pretty good chance to make the team there. One guy was the opposite of a surprise because Marla called him not last night, but early in the wee hours this morning on our cast last night. She called the Ohio State tackle. I think we closed up by Marla saying that they had or might be going to get him, and they did. If that was a surprise to me, it was a pleasant surprise. I love the fact that he's not just an Ohio State guy, and not just a super, super strong guy. I mean, 40 bench presses of 225. If you've ever lifted weights, go try to do 5. But I love him, love his attitude, I love the whole vibe. I love what he said in his conversation today. So I don't know that that's a surprise, but it's let's just say that to me was the most refreshing later picks, Nate.
Anytime the Browns pick a Buckeye, I'm surprised.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, it hasn't been that long ago I wrote a column at the Combine about why they never pick any Buckeyes. So that was probably only 2 combines ago. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I know they have Denzel, but that was a surprise to me too.
All right.
I wouldn't pick that as my surprise. I would pick the fact that they took two hybrid linebackers, but obviously I believe that position needs serious upgrades. So, and they do too.
All right,
I'm
guys.
glad you said that though, because oh, sorry, George. I'm just glad Marla said that because the Tony Fields pick is interesting, just because roughly the same size as JOK, and it's obviously like they're trying to now get these linebackers who fit what Joe Woods wants and can move them all over and have the speed to keep up with the offenses that are evolving. And it, like the Browns scouts and some of the executives explain, it's not just a quarterback with the running quarterbacks, but all the different positions and the tight ends and the running backs. And, just look at the Chiefs roster, the team that put the Browns out of the playoffs. All those weapons, you need a different kind of defender. And they got two of those types of linebackers. So I thought that was a good point, Marla.
Hey, all right, guys. I hadn't planned to do this, but we have a question. So I'm going to stick it up here on the screen, and let's have a go at it. If questions are permitted, why do you think JOK dropped in the draft? Size alone in the defensive schemes of individual teams. And as an aside, Marlon, George, you're lacking in the ceiling fan department. I have a ceiling fan. It's not in the frame.
Mine's not in this room.
Well, I think Andrew Berry kind of answered the question last night, and it's that, hey, he's undersized. He's not going to be everybody's flavor or fit because, he's just not a traditional linebacker. In most schemes, he's a tweener, and, you're not going to find an ideal spot for him. But Joe Woods, this is exactly what he wants. I was actually worried because when you see guys slide, you start to think about medical. And I saw some of that chatter among, people on Twitter, and a very respected draft analyst had put out medical. So I asked Paul DePodesta and Andrew Berry about that. And they said that there's nothing that, makes them uncomfortable from a medical standpoint. And DePodesta said he was a little bit dinged up and did not run his 40 at his pro day. But he did participate in other drills, and aside from that, there's no major concern or anything. There's no major concern at all. So I do think it's kind of the where does he fit thing, and the Browns are a team that thinks they know exactly where he fits.
All right, guys. You guys want to take a stab at that one?
I would just say that I think the NFL, they pride themselves on being creative and, coming up with, tricks and stuff. He might have been a little bit of because of his size, a little bit of a challenge for some teams who, I do think that, they're always in the let's prove how smart we are mode, but I'm not so sure that everyone in the league was ready to dive in on that.
Well, see, that brings me to a question I'm going to close this with. Are Barry, Stefanski, and this staff, this front office, ahead of the curve in the evolution of the NFL at this point, do you think? Are we looking at something like that with the way they drafted on the defensive side of the ball?
I think, George, on that, when you start talking about ahead of the curve, I think one of the criticisms of Brown's regimes and coaches and deep thinkers in the expansion era has been that they've spent too much time trying to be the smartest man in the room. So it is very possible, George, that the Browns regime now, there's some smart guys in there, granted, is trying to be ahead of the curve. But I would say that, yeah, they probably are trying to be ahead of the curve, and that's smart. If you don't get an edge, you're a 500 team in the lump with everybody else. You have to be getting every kind of edge you can. And this linebacker thing, the hybrid linebacker safety thing, does seem to be a cutting edge, and they're tapping into that. So, yeah, I'm not willing to say yet that they are ahead of the curve, because the defense is going to have to look a lot better in 2021 than it did in 2020 to say they're ahead of the curve.
Now, that may not take a whole lot.
Yeah.
I'd say
Hey,
that.
I'm not going to add to that because I agree with Steve. But real quick, my surprise is they did not take a defensive end. Tack McKinley, Jadeveon Clowney only on 1-year contracts, obviously with an opportunity to earn more. But I thought there was a place for a defensive end. I'm wondering if you guys were surprised to figure this out. But I did talk to Curtis Weaver last month, and they really like him. 5th-round pick last year with the Dolphins, missed the entire season, messed his toe up pretty bad in training camp, had to have surgery. The Browns claimed him off waivers and stashed him on IR. So he's like an extra draft pick. He's like having an incoming rookie defensive end, but I still thought they might add to the pile. I was wondering if you guys would consider that a surprise because that was mine.
It's not surprising, Nate. I agree with you that they need defensive end depth for sure, but I think it's just a product of one of the things that you hear every year that is true, and that is you can't do everything all at once. And even if you're a Super Bowl winner, you still have to manage. And of course, who's the grand maestro of that is Belichick. But look at his teams; they were so different from one Super Bowl team to the next. And not getting defensive end in this draft is just a product of not being able to do everything you would like to do. I'm sure that they know that they need to do it if they can.
All right, guys. I hear there's a mini camp, an in-person mini camp coming up for rookies and undrafted free agents.
Yeah, May 14th through the 16th.
So perhaps, go ahead.
I don't know if we'll be in person. I've been told it's TBD.
Got you.
Meaning media.
Okay, so maybe we'll see everybody then. Maybe it won't be again until training camp, but we're going to go because we still have work to do. Mm-hmm. On that note, we're going to sign off. Thanks for joining us, and have a good evening.
Thanks for watching.